Welcome to IMC Live, the interactive webinar series hosted by the Industrial Marketing Collective. We're here to help you make connections, learn, and get results for your business. I'm Alan Finnewald, Senior Writer at Industrial Marketing Agency Gorilla 76, and one of your IMC Live hosts. And this week, we are very pleased to have the topic of marketing by and for engineers with Mike Hill, General Manager and Product Development Expert at Big Rocks Engineering. And some of our avid listeners might remember Mike from our Mamstrong, the Missouri Association of Manufacturing Conference episode, where we were live from the floor talking about some of the stuff that we're going to dig deeper in today. So, Mike, thanks so much for being here.
I really appreciate it and absolutely honored.
All right, well, we're honored to have you. The last episode was a little bit more chaotic than this, but we'll have a few more voices, a few more questions for you here. So, it's great to follow up because we talk a lot about marketing to engineers.
Yeah.
And it's so rare that we actually just get to ask one what they think, especially one that has some marketing experience. So,
Yeah. Yeah. But extroverted engineer. That's how I'm classified. So maybe a little
uh
different.
yeah, well, we're glad to have one. Maybe we'll make some more today if, our marketers are successful in their efforts.
Yeah, so Mike, when you met Alan originally at in Branson, Missouri, or maybe we just want to even get started a little bit further out. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Big Rocks Engineering? So, like, you are an engineer there,
Yeah.
but you've become the de facto marketer. So, yeah, just tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah. So my background is engineering, project engineer, and executive. Ran engineering departments at several different aerospace defense as well as power electronics manufacturers. And in 2020, I actually started my own right before or in the middle of COVID, started my own engineering firm. And I ended up selling that to what is now Big Rocks Manufacturing, rebranding it as Big Rocks Engineering, and I run the day-to-day engineering with that. But with that acquisition, the strategy was to use Big Rocks Engineering as our value leader or our tip of the spear. So Big Rocks Engineering does our all business development, sales, and marketing for all of our entities under our umbrella, and that includes a CNC facility just south of St. Louis that does precision machining, a metal fabrication facility in Moberly, a powder coating facility in Moberly, and then a stamping and tool and die manufacturing company in Chillicothe, Missouri. And so we handle all of the sales and marketing for that, as well as any engineering projects to support OEMs, because that's the one commonality across all of our entities is that we service original equipment manufacturers.
All right, perfect. And so how did you find yourself becoming kind of the face of the firm, so to say?
I was really thrown into it, right? Obviously starting my own business have some entrepreneurial tendencies and wanted and so wasn't necessarily afraid of it and knew that sales calls and being kind of the outreach had to happen and as I basically like any engineer does, right, is what do we do when we're given a problem? We research it, right? And so I just started researching, reading, and just trying a lot of different things, and really kind of ended there by accident. And I've got an assistant who, from day one, we knew that this day and age we needed a social media presence, right? And and what does that look like, and how do we do that? And so we've tried several things throughout the years. We knew that we, in order for us to get any level of traction, we had to make it attractive to others, right? And we had to add value. And so my assistant basically said, you've got to do more, right? Add more value. And I had written a blog before I sold my company. We stopped doing it. And she's like, you've got to start writing the blog again. We were using some AI generated stuff and it just wasn't getting the traffic with it. and so she said, we've got to hear your voice. Your voice is what is triggering people. So she got me started on that, and then she, was like, can we record you just saying some things, right, and do some videos, and did some videos, and little did I know she was setting me up, because she basically came back and said, look at the data. Anytime we post a video of you on LinkedIn or any of our other social medias, Facebook, Instagram, it's almost 10 times more engagement than what we get, right? And again, we've started from nothing, zero followers across the board. And I'm not saying that we're going to be, but we're definitely on an upward trajectory, especially since we did that. And that was the biggest key, was just seeing that data put in front of me, that, hey, when you just kind of sit and speak, people listen, right? People want to hear, and they want to hear authenticity.
It's like in oh my gosh, why did I just forget the name, with Keanu Reeves, the Matrix, where he
Yeah.
takes he takes the pill, and you can't unsee what you've seen. Yeah, so mostly that's all been on LinkedIn for y'all.
Yeah, LinkedIn has definitely been our biggest, and there was one, all of our businesses are B2B. So we do post stuff, but it's really more repurposed items. Most of our main focus, social media, is absolutely LinkedIn. We recognize that is where our customer clientele, where they're going to be looking. So we spend more of our focus on that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like your assistant was really good at propelling you to see the truth and, knowing how to interact with you to kind of set you up for success. So what was that process like for you?
So yeah, no, her name's Jessica. Jessica has been fantastic to work with, and she's, when when we started off, with Big Rocks Engineering, we're we're all limited on resources, right? Especially this day and age. The labor market is tough. Everything is tough, and so how do we get everything manageable? And I asked, asked our owner, said, look, I need some help to do sales, marketing, and engineering right now is just a lot. And a lot of it's new for me outside of the engineering. The sales and marketing is new. And so he allowed me the opportunity to, to go out and hire a part-time assistant. And that process was, how we handled that process was really the key, because, we interviewed several individuals, but we used the predictive index assessment with her, so that we knew that she would cover some of my blind spots, and that was the intent of it, is so that, and that our personalities wouldn't clash, and she would know how to push me to the next level. And so when it came down to, how do I convince Mike to do what's right, she knew exactly which buttons to push, right? She knew that in order for me to make a decision, and we've been working together for almost 3 years by the time this decision really came out, she knew that I need to see the data. I need to see the trends. I need to see the logic behind what we're doing. It's not just a, hey, I feel like we should do this, or hey, I read it in this book, right? Because I've read the books, right? And I know what they say, but it wasn't really until, the data started trending to support what we were trying to accomplish.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably a big time investment for you though, still, right? Like, so how much time do you think? I think a lot of times engineers say no to helping with marketing because it is heavy, and
Yeah.
maybe they're a little intimidated to be in front of things. So like, I guess, how have you kept it light for yourself while still like, it's worth your time, right? You've seen the data. So I guess, like, how have you kept it manageable?
Um, I will say that is absolutely something that I personally work on almost daily, right? Because you're right, you can see the data, you see the results, but it's still hard, right? It is really, really hard to do, and it's hard to get in front of a camera, and especially if you're an engineer. I tell people anytime that I've got to go to a networking event or I've got to record videos, I need to clear my schedule for 2 days afterwards because I just need that time to recollect myself and get back into my zone, which is sitting behind a computer or sitting just being inside of myself, and and not peopling. And so, you know, so that there's focus that has to be, you have to do it. And we've tried several different things. We've tried blocking out every Friday, and Fridays are the day that, that marketing, that I do the marketing tasks. I write the blog, I write I write any white papers that we've got coming up. I start scheduling or putting together a webinar, or I record any videos. Well, guess what? Fridays quickly became, well, I'm open on Fridays. I can schedule a meeting there because I didn't want to do it. And so we've tried several different hacks. I don't know that we've got it licked. But the one thing that we do have is the recognition that it's important, right? And really, since I mentioned, Alan, you and I have talked about this before. MAM was an eye-opening experience, right? Like I said, um, we had been posting videos for 2 or 3 months at that point in time. Like I said, we've been convinced you've got to put more out there, more for people to see, and it's got to be your face. It can't be a generic AI picture. It can't be just something that me and and someone from the Philippines put together. It needs to be more authentic and from you, Mike. And so we'd been doing that. Q4 of last year, January, February, and we go to the MAM trade show in February, and I was nonstop. I brought, we've grown over the last several years that I got to hire a salesperson to come with me to these trade shows. It'd been me for the previous 3 years. And so I'm thinking I got 2 days of relaxation because I've got my sales associate here to man the booth, and all I've got to do is just fill in any questions. And it was anything but that. It was people walking up going, "Oh my gosh, I saw your LinkedIn post, and I want you to come meet this person here," or, "Hey, so and so said that you're going to be here, and to be sure to introduce myself," or Andrew coming up and saying, "Hey, this is Alan. He wants to have you on their Mamstrong Live podcast." And it was literally that. The show was what, Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, but it started the day before as I'm setting up the booth, right? The keynote speaker on the first day is still speaking, closing up. I'd snuck out to use the restroom, and I had someone walk up to me and say, "Oh my gosh, this is, we're with, so and so company. We know about you. We've seen you." And so all of a sudden, we're getting recognition that, this was our 4th year at this show, and we've done well at that show by any ROI justification. But the level of busy that came with it this year and recognition that came with it this year was unbelievable. And it's really continued on that trajectory ever since, since that. And that was the interesting, like, just the realization that, man, this has to be a priority. And so that part has been, that's how we make time for it. Like I said,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
spend the long way around to answer your question. That's how we recognize that it makes a serious difference. And so, we have to make time for it. And that's where, other people in the organization are starting to see that too. So they're starting to recognize that when these blocks are set off, that it's stuff that we really have to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's a lot of directions we could go off of that. I mean, was there anything else that you changed leading up to the MAM show this year besides just your increased intentionality on social?
Well, it was not just the intentionality on social, it was the, um, changing our mindset from just posting quantity to posting value, right? And that's what the lens that we're starting to use more and more is how do we, how are what we, how is it anything that we post, how does it really add value? Right. And we still have that, like our post yesterday, I think was just come see us at the Design Depart show next week in Chicago, right? Those still happen. But whenever we post things like my story, right? And I would have never thought my story would ever resonate with anybody. But you know, I think back to, when did, how did I learn about lean product development? And I remember, managers telling me, just go do this and having no clue what they meant by that. Right. And so, and knowing that there had to be better ways. And so that's where, we've shifted our lens to help people who were in my position 20 years ago, right? Who they may have seen it in school, but it definitely didn't resonate while they were in school, right? It was just another thing for them to learn for the test, right? And how do we and the ins and outs, the processes, the procedures, the tips, the tricks, all that stuff isn't taught, and it's learned through experience, and a lot of that experience, especially this day and age, is Google, Chat GPT, various other items. So how can we put it out there and make it easier to find? So that's the lens, or that's been the real shift, is making sure that what we do, tries to add value.
Yeah, and I think that's related to a question that Tom had in the chat before we get too far along. Tom, do you want to come on and ask that question real quick?
Sure. Just asking if you articulated your goal or strategy when you started creating those videos and get in front of the camera, um, and and kind of a follow-up of how did the strategy and goal evolve as you started getting more people paying attention?
Um, the answer is yes, but I don't know that we did it like we would have said it, like we're setting the vision or the goal and the strategy intentionally. I don't know that we would have phrased it at that time. And again, this goes back to when I said, look, I think that we need to do a better job of just generating more leads was really the reason for it, right? We needed to generate more leads. And as the guy, I was the only guy at the time calling down cold lists, right? Lists that we paid for, that people didn't necessarily want to hear from you. And when you play that game, it's a numbers game, period. Right. And so when you're playing the cold call game, and oh, and by the way, you're also leading an engineering group, and oh, you've also got 5 operations that that ownership wants you to be involved with, and we've got continual improvement and Kaizen projects that we're doing at different facilities, and how do you work in 100 phone calls a day? And that's a low number. And so that was the intent, is how do we generate more leads? And it was my assistant that said, okay, well, if you want to do social media and we want to do digital marketing, we need to define some things, right? We need to set what goals are realistic. And so we've got a scorecard that we track every week on what our engagements are, what our likes and follows are, and we had to become super focused because again, we've got 7 brands, right? And there's no way for us to do that. So we had to really narrow down our focus on that. But then she took it a step further and said, all right, what is the ideal customer? Who is it that we're really talking to? Are we talking to purchasing agents? Are we talking to CEOs? Or are we talking to other engineers? And so we got super hyper focused on how do we talk to other engineers, and engage that. And so we just kind of we went through that process. And I will say that evolved. Oh my gosh, has that evolved? It at one point in time, it probably seemed like it was evolving on a daily basis. And we changed it and moved and we tried a lot of different things. And that's where, like I said, when the data came out of me being on camera was the front runner. That was the, oh my gosh, we finally have a trend, right? We've tried so many things. We've thrown the spaghetti against the wall so many times. Let's take we took the shotgun approach. But here's something that just seems to be happening over and over again. And so that was how, it wasn't until till we finally started going, all right, this is the direction we have. And again, we don't have a huge following by any means, but what we've gotten back to the MAM trade show, and we've seen it in other events, is we've gotten some level of recognition, right? So when because we're still making the cold calls, we're still doing the follow-ups, and when all of a sudden people are going, oh yeah, I recognize the name, right? Whether they're lying or not, there's some level of reality that there's starting to be this complete picture that's going around. It's not just soft or these random calls that pop up in the on the caller ID. There's some level of, oh, you've got advertising and Design Depart, or you've been at the Design Depart show, or you've been at this trade show, or oh yeah, you've also got this content out there. So we're starting to see more recognition from it, and like I said, that's how it's evolved. It started really as we need to find a way to solve this problem, and it was a time constraint problem, and we've filled it with kind of getting bigger, more recognition. How do we get more bang for the buck from it?
Yeah. It's like an icebreaker. The hardest part's already kind of done for you because you've already supplied them with something of value, or at least they are familiar with the name. And it's
Yeah,
not just like they don't have to do the whole, okay, do I even believe this company exists thought in their brain when you introduce yourself on a cold call
yeah.
or the trade show.
And that's a fantastic point, because that's the other thing that we have seen is, I remember 10 years ago, and we still, I've been in meetings where we still say it. We need to set up a website just so people know that we're legit, right? And how many people have put up a website just because someone might Google them? Okay, well, that's not enough anymore, right? To be legit, you need to have something something of value, something of that there's some participation, because there's so many websites out there that are stale, and you can see that they're stale. They were done in the late 90s, and they haven't been updated. You can tell by the menu bar on the
Yeah.
side, and and you recognize that there's clearly no engagement for growth and bringing on new customers in those companies. So do you want to do business with them? And I think that's where the digital and the content creation takes it to the next level, because it is what a website was 10 years ago. You need that level of commitment to your customers, right? Like your commitment before was we've got a website. We took the time to make a website to say that we're still alive and in business. Well, now, to show proof that you're alive and in business, you're putting out content, you're putting out value to show that there's opportunities for potential customers or even suppliers to engage with you and understand your point of view and the value that you bring to the table.
I think just one of the things you said there, keyword participation. Like you can't just sit back and expect folks to notice you or think you're going to like think anything about you, like especially a stale website, right? Like if you, it doesn't signal that your company is modern or evolving or active, alive in any way. And that's just a website, right? Same thing can be said. Like you have to participate in the channels where your customers are at. So is that a trade show, showing up, participating? You can't just like sit behind your
Yeah.
table. That's not how you do a trade show well anymore. You can't just be quiet on LinkedIn and expect like it's not enough just to have a company profile if you want growth. Like I guess if you're okay with status quo and like whatever scraps kind of come your way,
Yeah.
maybe you
Well,
can still get some gains. But
and anytime we engage with any customer, we tell them, look, you've got to work with people that you trust. We believe that trust is the great differentiator in what we do. And how do you build trust when people have a quarter second or less of attention, right? And because you can't, the days of showing up with, with a box of cookies out of random, you're just like every other salesperson at that point in time, and you added no value, but thank you for the cookies. I will gladly eat some crumble on your behalf. But it's how do you go up above and beyond to differentiate yourself and build that rapport in an environment that people don't want to these days.
Yeah.
How have y'all, so like you've mentioned a little bit, like you wanted to kind of change the sort of content that you're putting out there. Obviously, like just looking at your LinkedIn, like you still got to post like I'm going to be at this show, or
Yeah.
kind of like the nuts and bolts sort of things. But like, how have you decided, obviously your own personal experience, but like what your audience actually wants to hear? Like, how have you known? Did you guys sit back and do some sort of like reflective internal workshop and brainstorm some things, or did you talk to your customers?
So we've took a few different approaches. The first really, and where a lot of this started was, what did I want to hear? Right? How do I think back and when I was in that situation, what is it that I wanted to hear? And then we took a little bit step further with that and said, well, what do we think people want to hear? Right. And so where did some of the things that we've posted in the past, where does some of this stuff, and again, none of this is super fast, because that, and this is maybe, my inner engineer coming out, is I want to see where, what is actually happening. We've got to try a lot of different things to see what's working, what isn't working, where people engage, where people don't engage, and that's really hard when there's very little data. But I'll tell you the more recent what we did that has helped a lot, and this is where I think AI really has has the opportunity, especially in marketing, is we kind of asked the question, and we asked it from different points of view and different perspectives to chat GPT to kind of tell us, what are the pain points right now, for engineers, and what are, what things will add value. And so we generate several lists of topics, and if it's something that, that we feel that we can add value to, then we will, right? I think we did a white paper a few weeks ago, and we're looking at doing a webinar in June about setting up partnerships in your supply chain, right? And how do you find good contract manufacturers, and what are the tips? Because that's something that just came out over and over again, which is a solution that we offer at all of our entities. And so, when we ask Chat GPT, what are the current problems in the environment? We took that, and what solutions do we offer, and where do they overlap? That's where we're at today. Again, we do not have this figured out. This is simply our experience and what we're going through. I mean, you're seeing it in real time as we evolve daily with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like, everyone in this group is very supportive of a lot of the things that we've been saying so far, is preaching to the choir in a lot of respects. But some of the things that we were talking about at MAM that I definitely want to get into are, as an engineer, what are the things that marketers could do better when speaking to engineers? You kind of have the advantage of being on both sides of the coin there. So like one of the things that I remember we're talking about was that engineers like to have fun too, and you can market in fun ways to engineers. So can you talk a bit more about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, and again, I wish we did this even better, and maybe that's next quarter, we can focus on that. I think engineers are people too, right? That's the reality. Is we love to stereotype engineers, right? And I get it. We have the biggest bullseye on our back, as we as in any company, because we are slightly more introverted, and we care about the data, and we want to see the numbers, and it's being from Missouri, we're the show me people, right? You got to show us before we really believe it. But the truth of the matter is we're as diverse as anybody else, right? And there's a handful of us that love sports and athletics, and there's a handful that don't. And it's realizing that there's a broad spectrum, but it's like marketing to any other niche. You've got to find where do you resonate and understand that where you resonate, those are your people. And the ones that you don't resonate with, they're not your people. And that's okay. Right. And so you need to put the message out for who you really want to. And I think that's where we did really well, and is really defining, who do we want to talk to? What does that personality look like? Because there's like I said, in engineering department, as well as any other department, you've got people on both sides of the spectrum of personality, right? And the person that's always obstinate, is that really the person that you want to talk to? Or is it the person that is fun loving, you can kick back at the, over a beer with, and you can enjoy talking Star Wars with, right? That's who you want to engage, because if they're obstinate, they're going to be obstinate from the beginning all the way to the end. You're never going to convince them that they're wrong. So enjoy what you do, and if you enjoy it, they're going to enjoy it too, because they most likely have overlapping personality traits that you're trying to engage in anyways.
Yeah, you were saying that like when you had the most fun, it's in that was when you got the best engagement
Yeah.
because people could see, oh, like I can relate to this guy as a person and we are in the same business. I would like to do business with him.
Yep. Exactly. Right. And that's I think that's the like I said, the trust part, right? And the rapport part, because I mean, we use metaphors all the time in business, right? It's like, partnership and marriage, right? I'm a supplier, customer is like a marriage, right? Well, do you really want to be married to someone who you can't stand them? Not at all, right? So you need to define who it is that you really want to work with, and if that personality doesn't align, all you're doing is you're asking for pain. And we've done that. We've taken on customers who I desperately want to do more work with garage inventors. I think that they are super creative, they're super smart, but every time we try to do a job with a garage inventor, we screw it up. That there's too much of a personality difference. The expectations and the reality just never seem to align. And then you've got this added hurdle of they don't have as much money as a corporation, right? And so there's always this friction there. And I mean, I literally took a job at a makerspace for 2 years because that's how bad I wanted to help these types of individuals. And like I said, we still take them on as clients today, and more often than not, we mess it up, right? And it's because we're just different, versus if I can sit in the room with another engineer that has been through the product development process, that has been through the pain of, well, that didn't work, where do we go now, right? We can empathize with each other, we can understand each other's viewpoint, and we can joke about it and have fun with it, and you move forward in a more lockstep methodology. And that's where, like I said, you have to recognize who it is that you really want to work with, and you've got to be brutally honest with yourself, right? That, like, man, this customer would be fantastic, but that's going to be really hard for us. And we do that in our manufacturing businesses as well. There are several very large OEMs that we would love to work with, but do we really want to do all that paperwork? Do we want to take on another quality management system? Do we want to do all these things, right? That's too much friction there. And so that's the part where you've got
I
to,
think what you're saying here is all like, it's nice that you know this and you're also in the marketing seat.
yeah.
I wonder how many marketers have this level of insight into like their ideal customer and like the wants to work with the garage inventors, but really it's better if we work with these larger companies, and it's really better if we're across the table from this job title, because all of that I think really lends itself to a stronger marketing program with stronger results. It's like if you like if the engineer shares that information, so like I'm guessing you're touching base with your assistant probably like
Oh, yeah.
every day or every other day at least. And you know, back to Tom's question about evolution, like how your program's evolved, like you're talking this through and then you're saying, okay, so now what? Right? I mean, like how do we build on this? Like we want to do this. This is better for the business. How do we then take our want to have fun and
Yeah.
reach these people?
Well, and I think that absolutely right. It's you have to recognize that there's a level of trial and error that has to occur, because you have to stub your toe, right? And it's you got to burn yourself on the stove before you recognize, well, that's hot. Let's not do that again a few times. Because every marketing book I've I've read starts off with create your customer avatar, right? And I was as resistant to that as anybody else. But it wasn't until we really dove into that we started making a difference. And exactly to your point with the evolve, right? It really is every day. Well, that didn't work. What do we try next? And well, that didn't work, or that really worked. How do we double down on that, right? And how do we do more of that? And it is, that's been the one thing, both the sales and the marketing portion of the business that, you know, when you're an engineer, right, you try to, the Toyota, product development process, you try to identify all the issues that you can up front first, right? That way you mitigate the risks of them happening down the road, right? And you don't get, 100, 200 trial and errors in engineering. You get one or two, right? And but with marketing, it's a little bit different. And the sales side, it's a little bit different, right? Because I can mess up with a cold call today, and I can call back next month and they forgot who I am, right? So I can try 100 different ways really quick. And I think that's the big difference is that you can try a lot of different things and really find what works for your message, for your customer, and for your audience.
Yeah.
I was going to say, jump to Katie's question from earlier in the chat, just about like what's been working for you guys. Have you found that there's a particular type of content that has really like your audience has kind of glommed onto? So be it like a blog, the videos, infographics, like what's working best for you guys?
Um,
Or is
so
it more purely like just when it's your personal like
yeah, that's exactly right. Having the personality behind it. Now I get people by the numbers, the videos get way more engagement than the blogs or anything else that we do. But the notoriety, the recognition comes with just networking, just talking with people, being available, and putting yourself out there. That's where the intangible sits, right? Is having, like I said, a bit of the personality to go along with it. And it's not just a blank video on the screen. And we're fortunate enough that a lot of our customers are co-located, right, to where we're at, right? And so if I post something on LinkedIn, right, I very well may see that person at the next, Midwest Manufacturing Leadership event. Okay, so there's that connection that happens, right? Or they're somewhere already in my network. And that's I think that's really right now where we're at. As we grow, I don't know, right? Because we're eventually going to grow past my network, right? And my coworkers' networks, and get past that. And I really hope that we do. Maybe I'll have a better answer at that point in time, and more data. Because like I said, if you look at our numbers now, we're still very small, and we're pulling data out of, really too small of samples right now.
It's qualitative.
Yeah.
But you're getting started.
Yeah,
You're getting started, and a lot of people are just quiet. So and I think it's really interesting because I don't know that we've really put a timestamp on this. You said that this original like design, like this realization, I think you originally called it an awakening, that happened late 2024.
Yeah.
So this
So-
hasn't even been that long of a journey for you guys yet, and you've already seen the conversations being like improving, the awareness of your company increasing.
And so if you, like I said, the awakening kind of, like I said, happened the end of last year, Q4 last year. But I took over social media in 21, April of 21. So we're 4 years into this here, right? And year one, we had a few likes and follows. Year two, a few more likes and follows. Year three, and then it was, bam, we're gonna switch to this, and we've doubled in the last 6 months, right? And so that's the data that I'm talking about, right? Is you go from just a few followers or incrementals, and then all of a sudden you switch your strategy or you switch what you're doing, and you're doubling at that point in time, and then and we'll double again, and that's where the trend line that we're looking for is at, right? And like you said, we're really in the infancy of the awakening, right? Of, oh shoot, we can get more opportunities this way, and we have seen those opportunities come with it.
Yeah. We're about over time here, but I do want to get one question in from the chat that Matthew Olson had. I feel like we could probably knock it out real quick. But for
You do?
engineer,
I feel like that's a beefy, like we could probably have a whole
I
show
think
about that.
I think I can do a prep to the question that'll keep it faster. But do you feel like you can break down the most effective content for engineers when it comes to the knowing content, like introductory content, the liking content, like making them actually appreciate your personality or your company or whatever, and then the trust content? And I think based on what we've heard so far, the knowing is the video, getting yourself out there. The like could also be a video, but maybe it's a more specific video that you're going into something you're more passionate about. And I feel like the trust is the blogs that contain that hard data, the show part that engineers are going to want before they make a full decision. Am I on base there?
No, absolutely. All right. I mean, we're I don't think compartmentalizing your content, I don't think there's any issue with that, right? Some stuff you're going to put out there, and you're going to put out there just because you want engagement on there, just because you want the likes, the follows, right? And it's going to be a lot more lighthearted. It's going to be a lot more, notice, and it's almost back to no publicity is bad publicity, right? Because again, if you want to do this as a part of your whole, right? How does this add to everything else that we're doing? How does this add to the calls? How does this add to the trade shows? How does this add to the mailers and the advertising? Like, how does this fit with that? And so it's about creating that brand recognition. So absolutely separating them up into, hey, this is something that I want people to know about. This is something that I want people to like and engage in, and this is something that people that is going to build the trust. Absolutely approach it that way.
All right, fantastic.
Well, great. I feel like we're at time here, but Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show yet again to talk with us. We really appreciate it, especially you're coming in on the road. So thank you for being here.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sticking with me on this one.
Yeah, I dropped the Big Rocks Engineering in your LinkedIn page in the chat already, but if folks want to get connected with you, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn anymore. If not, feel free to email me at mhill@bigrocksengineering.com.
Great. Awesome. Well, our next episode, everybody, is going to be on May 15th, and we're throwing you another curveball. This is going to be in the afternoon, another happy hour episode at 4 p.m. Central Time. Our delightful guest is going to be talking about delightful content. We have Rose Hansen, Director of Accounts here at Gorilla and senior writer, award-winning writer, is going to be joining us on that show. So May 15th, 4 p.m. here in Zoom. So if you don't see that on your calendar, go ahead and re-register for that event. And then between now and then, if you want to keep the conversation going, Industrial Marketing Collective has an online community called On Circle. There's lots of discussion boards that are active on there, lots of conversations happening every single week. And yeah, we'd love to have you. So just go to industrialmarketingcollective.com to join that, or ping me or Alan or any of the gorillas on LinkedIn, and we can get you added. With that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will see you again May 15th. Thanks, everyone.